Eleusine coracana, Wikipedia audio. Eleusine coracana, or finger millet, is an annual herbaceous plant widely grown as a cereal crop in the arid and semi-arid areas in Africa and Asia. It is a tetraploid and self-pollinating species probably evolved from its wild relative Eleusine africana. Finger millet is native to the Ethiopian and Ugandan highlands. Interesting crop characteristics of finger millet are the ability to withstand cultivation at altitudes over 2,000 meters above sea level, its favorable micronutrient contents, its high drought tolerance and the very long storage time of the grains. Finger millet originated in East Africa and came to India around 2000 BCE. It has been found in an Indian archaeological site dated to 1800 BCE. In Sri Lanka, it is known as coracana or carahan and mentioned in legends of ancient kings. History. Main cultivation areas are Eastern and Southern African countries and Southern Asia. Finger millet is a short-day plant with a growing optimum 12 hours of daylight for most varieties. Its main growing area ranges from 20 degrees north to 20 degrees south, meaning mainly the semi-arid to arid tropics. Nevertheless, finger millet is found to be grown at 30 degrees north in the Himalaya region. It is generally considered as a drought-tolerant crop. But compared with other millets, such as pearl millet and sorghum, it prefers moderate rainfall. The majority of worldwide finger millet farmers grow it rain-fed, although yields often can be significantly improved when irrigation is applied. In India, finger millet is a typical rabi crop. Heat tolerance of finger millet is high. For Ugandan finger millet varieties, for instance, the optimal average growth temperature ranges at about 27 degrees Celsius, while the minimal temperatures shouldn't be lower than 18 degrees Celsius. Relatively to other millet species, finger millet has a higher tolerance to cool temperatures. It is grown from about 500 meters above sea level up to about 2,400 meters above sea level. By that, it can be cultivated on higher elevations than most tropical crops. Finger millet can grow on various soils, including highly weathered tropical lateritic soils. Furthermore, it can tolerate soil salinity up to a certain extent. Its ability to bear waterlogging is limited, therefore good drainage of the soils and moderate water holding capacity are optimal. Finger millet can tolerate moderately acidic soils but also moderately alkaline soils. With legumes, finger millet / dolichos, finger millet / pigeon pea, finger millet / black gram, finger millet / castor, with cereals, finger millet / maize, finger millet / foxtail millet, finger millet / jowar, finger millet / little millet, with other species, finger millet / brassicas, finger millet / mustard. Finger millet monocrops grown under rain-fed conditions are most common in drier areas of eastern Africa. In addition, intercropping with legumes, such as cowpea or pigeon pea, are also quite common in East Africa. Tropical Central Africa supports scattered regions of finger millet intercropping mostly with legumes, but also with cassava, plantain, and vegetables. Most common finger millet intercropping systems in South India are as follows. Weeds are the major biotic stresses for finger millet cultivation. Its seeds are very small, which leads to a relatively slow development in early growing stages. This makes finger millet a weak competitor for light, water, and nutrients compared with weeds. In East and Southern Africa, the closely related species Eleusine indica is a severe weed competitor of finger millet. Especially in early growing stages of the crop and the weed, and when broadcast seeding instead of row seeding is applied, the two species are very difficult to distinguish. Besides Eleusine indica, the species Xanthium strumarium, which is animal disp irised, and the stolen-owning species Cyperus rotundus and Cynodon dactylon are important finger millet weeds. Measures to control weeds include cultural, physical, and chemical methods. Cultural methods could be sowing in rows instead of broadcast sowing in order to make distinction between finger millet seedlings and Eleusine indica easier when hand weeding. ICRISAT promotes cover crops and crop rotations to disrupt the growing cycle of the weeds. Physical weed control in financial resource-limited communities growing finger millet are mainly hand weeding or weeding with a hand hoe. Finger millet is generally seen as not very prone to diseases and pests. Nonetheless, finger millet blast, caused by the fungal pathogen Magnoporthygria, can locally cause severe damages, especially when untreated. In Uganda, yield losses up to 80% were reported in bad years. The pathogen leads to drying out of leaves, neck rots and ear rots. These symptoms can drastically impair photosynthesis, translocation of photosynthetic assimilates and grain filling, and therefore reduce yield and grain quality. Finger millet blast can also infest finger millet weeds such as the closely related Eleusine indica, Eleusine africana, or Digitaria species, Setaria species, and Dactyloctorium spp. Finger millet blast can be controlled with cultural measures, chemical treatments, and the use of resistant varieties. Cultural measures to control finger millet blast suggested by ICRISAT for Eastern Africa include crop rotations with non-host crops like legumes, deep plowing under of finger millet straw on infected fields, washing of field tools after use to prevent dissemination of the pathogen to non-infected fields, weed control to reduce infections by weed hosts, and avoiding of too high plant densities to impede the pathogen dispersal from plant to plant. Chemical measures can be direct spraying of systemic fungicides, such as the active ingredients pyroquilin or tricyclazone, or seed dressings with fungicides like tricyclazole. Another pathogen of relevance in the finger millet cultivation is the fungus Helminthosporium nodulosum, causing leaf blight. Broadcasting, seeds are directly sown in the field. This is the common method because it is the easiest way and no special machinery is required. The organic weed management with this method is a problem, because it is difficult to distinguish between weed and crop. Line sowing, improved sowing compared to broadcasting. Facilitates organic weed management due to better distinction of weed and crop. In this method, spacing of 22 cm to 30 cm between lines and 8 cm to 10 cm within lines should be maintained. The seeds should be sown about 3 cm deep in the soil, drilling in rows. Seeds are sown directly in the untreated soil by using a direct seed drill. This method is used in conservation agriculture, transplanting the seedlings, raising the seedlings in nursery beds and transplant to the main field. Leveling and watering of beds is required during transplanting. Seedlings with 4 weeks age should be transplanted in the field. For early Rabi and Kharif season, seedlings should be transplanted at 25 cm x 10 cm, and for late Kharif season at 30 cm x 10 cm. Planting should be done 3 cm depth in the soil. Important finger millet pests are bird predators, such as Calea in East Africa. The pink stem borer and the shoot fly are considered as the most relevant insect pests in finger millet cultivation. Measures to control Sesamia inferens are uprooting of infected plants, destroying of stubbles, having a crop rotation, chemical control with insecticides, biological measures such as pheromone traps or biological pest control with the use of antagonistic organisms. Propagation in finger millet farming is done mainly by seeds. In rain-fed cropping are 4 sowing methods used. Growing regions. Crop does not mature uniformly and hence the harvest is to be taken up in 2 stages. When the earhead on the main shoot and 50% of the earheads on the crop turn brown, the crop is ready for the first harvest. At the first harvest, all earheads that have turned brown should be cut. After this drying, threshing and cleaning the grains by winnowing. The second harvest is around 7 days after the first. All earheads, including the green ones, should be cut. The grains should then be cured to obtain maturity by heaping the harvested earheads in shade for 1 day without drying, so that the humidity and temperature increase and the grains get cured. After this drying, threshing and cleaning as after the first harvesting. Once harvested, the seeds keep extremely well and are seldom attacked by insects or molds. Finger millet can be kept for up to 10 years when it is unthreshed. Some sources report a storage duration up to 50 years under good storage conditions. The long storage capacity makes finger millet an important crop in risk avoidance strategies as a famine crop for poor farming communities. As a first step of processing, finger millet can be milled to produce flour. However, finger millet is difficult to mill due to the small size of the seeds and because the bran is bound very tightly to the endosperm. Furthermore, the delicate seed can get crushed during the milling. The development of commercial mechanical milling systems for finger millet is challenging. Therefore, the main product of finger millet is whole grain flour. This has disadvantages, such as reduced storage time of the flour due to the high oil content. Furthermore, the industrial use of whole grain finger millet flour is limited. Recently a new milling system was developed in India, which is able to grind finger millet grains. This milling system is called mini millet mill. The mini millet mill takes into account the traditional knowledge of the farmers and moistens the seeds half an hour before grinding. Moistening the millet seeds prior to grinding helps to remove the bran mechanically without causing damage to the rest of the seed. The mini millet mill can also be used to process other grains such as wheat and sorghum. The mini millet mill could be promising as it yields white flour which can be commercially used. Another method to process the finger millet grain is germinating the seed. This process is also called malting process and is very common in the production of brewed beverages such as beer. When finger millet is germinated, enzymes are activated, which transfer starches into other carbohydrates such as sugars. Finger millet has a good malting activity. The malted finger millet can be used as a substrate to produce, for example, gluten-free beer or easily digestible food for infants. Finger millet is especially valuable as it contains the amino acid methionine, which is lacking in the diets of hundreds of millions of the poor who live on starchy staples such as cassava, plantain, polished rice, or maize meal. Finger millet can be ground and cooked into cakes, puddings or porridge. The grain is made into a fermented drink in Nepal and in many parts of Africa. The straw from finger millet is used as animal fodder. It is also used for a flavored drink in festivals. Nutritional value of finger millet per 100 grams. The International Crops Research Institute for the Semi-Arid Tropics, a member of the GIRE Consortium, partners with farmers, governments, researchers, and NGOs to help farmers grow nutritious crops, including finger millet. This helps their communities have more balanced diets and become more resilient to pests and drought. For example, the Harnessing Opportunities for Productivity Enhancement of Sorghum and Millets in Sub-Saharan Africa and South Asia project is increasing yields of finger millet in Tanzania by encouraging farmers to grow improved varieties. Finger millet is very high in calcium, rich in iron and fiber, and has a better energy content than other cereals. These characteristics make it ideal for feeding to infants and the elderly. Climate requirements. Cropping systems. In India, finger millet, K-Varagu, Nakani, Mandua, Mandia, same is mostly grown and consumed in Karnataka, Rajasthan, Andhra Pradesh, Tamil Nadu, Odisha, Maharashtra, Goa, Uttarakhand, and Gujarat. Weeds. Diseases and pests. Propagation and sowing. Harvest. Storage. The finger millet is malted and its grain are grind to form flour. The flour is consumed mixed with milk, boiled water, or yogurt. The flour is made into flat breads, including thin, leavened dosa and thicker, unleavened roti. There are various food recipes of finger millet, including dosa, idli, laddu etc. In southern India, on pediatricians' recommendation, finger millet is used in preparing baby food, because of millet's high nutritional content, especially iron and calcium. Homemade finger millet malt is considered to be very good for health. Finger millet is very popular and sattva, pole, bukri, ambal, papad are very common preparations. Nakani lodges are common in some families. Processing. In Maharashtra, bukri, a type of flat bread is prepared using finger millet flour. In Karnataka, finger millet is generally consumed in the form of ragi mud. It is the staple diet of many residents of South Karnataka, especially in the rural areas. Mud is prepared by cooking the ragi flour with water to achieve a dough-like consistency. This is then rolled into balls of desired size and consumed with huli, saru, or curries. Mud is cut into biteable sizes using fingers, dipped in the curry preparation and swallowed wholly without biting into the pieces. Ragi is also used to make roti, idli, dosa and kanji. In the Malnad region of Karnataka, the whole ragi grain is soaked and the milk is extracted to make a dessert known as kilsa. A type of flat bread is prepared using finger millet flour, called in northern districts of Karnataka. In Tamil Nadu, ragi is called K-Varagu or just kep pie. Ragi is dried, powdered, and boiled to form a thick mass that is allowed to cool. This is the famed kali or kep pie kali. This is made into large balls to quantify the intake. It is taken with sambar or thick spicy lentil soups flavored with tamarind extracts. For children, ragi is also fed with milk and sugar. It is also made in the form of pancakes with chopped onions and tomatoes. K-Varagu is used to make putta with jaggery/sugar and ade and tapping it flat on a hot skillet. Apart from that, ragi has its medicinal uses for sinus and severe cold by applying boiled K-Varagu flour cooled to skin-bearable warmth on the forehead. Ragi is considered to be the holy deity food of Amman, otherwise known as Goddess Kali. Every small or large festival of this goddess is celebrated with women making ragi porridge in the temples and distributing it to the poor and needy. This porridge is called kuz, a staple diet in farming communities, eaten along with raw onions and green chilies. In Telangana state, finger millet malt called ambali, is consumed in morning as breakfast. In Andhra Pradesh, ragi sankati or ragi mutta, ragi balls, are eaten in the morning with a chili, onions, sambar or meat curry. Milling. In Kerala, puttu, a traditional breakfast dish, is usually made with rice powder with grated coconut and steamed in a cylindrical steamer. The preparation is also made with ragi powder, which is more nutritive. In the tribal and western hilly regions of Odisha, ragi or mandai is a staple food. The porridge and pitha made of ragi are more popular among village folk. Malting. In the Garhwal and Kumaon region of Uttarakhand, Kota or Madua is made into thick rotis, and also made as a dish, bati, similar to halwa but without sugar. In the Kumaon region of northern India, ragi is traditionally fed to women after childbirth. In Nepal, a thick dough made of millet flour is cooked and eaten by hand. The dough, on other hand, can be made into thick bread spread over flat utensil and heating it. Fermented millet is used to make a beer chhang and the mash is distilled to make a liquor. Whole grain millet is fermented to make tongba. Its use in holy Hindu practices is barred especially by upper castes. Nutrition. Growing finger millet to improve nutrition. Preparation as food. In Sri Lanka, finger millet is called coracana and is made into coracana roti, an earthy brown thick roti with coconut and thal lapa, a thick dough made of ragi by boiling it with water and some salt until like a dough ball. It is then eaten with a very spicy meat curry and is usually swallowed in small balls, rather than chewing. It is also eaten as a soup and as a sweet called hilapi. In northwest Vietnam, finger millet is used as a medicine for women at childbirth. A minority use finger millet flour to make alcohol. Ragi malt porridge is made from finger millet which is soaked and shadow dried, then roasted and ground. This preparation is boiled in water and given to children, patients, adults, etc. This is a good substitute for milk powder-based beverages. Fields of finger millet in the Annapurna region of Nepal. Finger millet sprays in Uganda. Multicolored finger millet grains. Fresh ragi. In India. Konkan region and Goa. Maharashtra. Karnataka. Tamil Nadu. Telangana. Andhra Pradesh. Kerala. Central and northern India. In South and Far East Asia. In Nepal. In Sri Lanka. In Vietnam. As beverage. Common names for finger millet. Gallery.